above me. When one heart
You're listening to 98.3 FM, WRLR LP, Round Lake, Illinois.
Hello, and welcome to Lake County Sports Scoop. I'm your host, Carson Beck, and I'm joined by Carmel Corsairs varsity assistant boys basketball coach, my co-host, Fidel Garcia, and we're also joined by a special appearance guest to our show, the Lake County's Golden Sports Show. I almost said my show name. Patrick Voss.
Well, what's going on, Carson? How you doing?
Doing good. Coach, how are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm ready to get into some business here.
All right, let's dive into some Lake County sports as usual. You've been listening to 98.3 WRLR, the voice of Lake County. And the first team we'll talk about is a team that's currently first place in the North Suburban, as that'll be the conference we'll focus on first, the Stevenson Patriots. Stevenson is 5-0 coming off their only game last week versus Westinghouse. That they won 53-43. Stevenson will host Libertyville this Tuesday, who is 5-1, and they will host Zion Bend on Friday, who is 3-2. Then they will play Oak Park River Forest, who is 2-3 on Saturday at Mount Carmel. And before we weigh in on this, I want to give a quick announcement to our listeners. Tune into WRLR this Saturday, pregame at 2. And game at 2:30 as the Grays Lake Central Rams take on the Lakes Eagles right here on WRLR. But I'm going to start off with Coach Garcia. Coach, what do you take so far from the Stevenson Patriots, one of two teams not only in the conference but in the county that's remaining undefeated?
Well, for one, they've met expectation, 5-0, played very well, won their Thanksgiving tournament. But now conference play starts, so it's going to be interesting. We're gonna get some action against some pretty quality teams for against Stevenson right off the bat.
I have to tell you, Carson, here's what I think's going down. Here's what I really think's going down is Stevenson last year, 27-6. It's a team that stands above the rest in a lot of ways, where your only key loss right now is Luke Chang. So you have Luke, only person gone as a key loss. So if he's listed as only gone, I say that what are your chances of repeating that kind of a record and really breezing through conference play? I think it's very, very likely in a situation like this, and I think Stevenson is set up very well.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that. A player to watch maybe would be R.J. Holmes, who's he's poised to have a really strong season. He's an MIT commit. This is high character, high academics, and he also jumps really, really high. But he's just a really good athlete for the Stevenson team that really kind of sets them apart from a lot of teams in the Chicagoland area.
Well, going off of what Patrick said, I wouldn't really call it a breeze towards defending their conference title, because if we look at the conference standings from last year, as we've noted in the last few weeks, there was a 5-way tie for third, and also that championship that Stevenson had last year was also shared with Waukegan. So by all means, the North Suburban is not a conference that you can quite breeze through in. And there's definitely some spoilers in there, as well as the next team that we'll be talking about in just a quick second in Mundelein, as well as Libertyville and Zion and maybe Warren, maybe Lake Forest playing spoiler to try messing up some of the cruise control, if you would say, for that conference championship.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. This Mundelein team's a real threat too. I think the question over the offseason is, have the Mustangs, because their big two was probably one of the components in them being very successful last year, but now this is a Mustang team with more than just a big two. There's other guys, other contributors, Bicus, there's Trey Baker, there's a forward now that was on the sophomore team, Sam, I'm drawing a blank on his last name, but there's guys that are contributing to this Mundelein team, and the question that we're going to find out is, has the Mustangs, have they gotten better over this offseason, or is this going to be the typical Stevenson team that we see that every single year is ending up on top?
And I'm glad you brought up Mundelein, because they'll be the next team we talk about right now. They are the other remaining undefeated team, sitting at 6-0, coming off an impressive win, 2 wins actually, in North Chicago, beating them by 34, 66-32. And then Schurz from the Chicago Public League on Saturday, 74-44. Mundelein will start conference play tomorrow on Tuesday against Lake Forest, who is 3-3, and then they'll host Waukegan on Friday, who is 0-5. So, Coach Garcia, I'm going to start with you again. What do you take from the start that Mundelein's had? They beat a couple teams that they lost to last year earlier in Warren and Deerfield, and then they also took care of business against teams that they probably should be able to handle and in dominant fashion.
There's 3 parts of a team when you're working on being successful, and Mundelein has all 3 of those parts. They got rebounding, they have multiple scorers, and then they got that go-to guy. They got a few go-to guys. So this Mustang team is legit. They're by far the upper echelon of even the Chicagoland area. They're getting a lot of attention locally too. But again, this is a Power 5, kind of like a Power 5 conference in the Chicagoland area. This is always kind of expected, but it's been a while since the Mustangs have been on that top list. So their legitimacy we're gonna find out in the next couple weeks.
Patrick, to you.
Yeah, well, I mean, as far as Mundelein, there's something I wanted to bring up to you guys. See what you guys think. Coach Matt Badgley of Mundelein Mustangs. It's only his 3rd year this year, and you said they're 6-0?
Correct.
So 6-0 this year. They finished at 20-12 last year. Is it due to great coaching? Is it like and I hate to do this because, of course, with the Bulls, you have Tom Thibodeau, but he worked his guys into the ground, but had a great work ethic in the beginning of the season. Is that what we're seeing here from Coach Badgley? Or is it due mostly to the players now gelling together and really willing to take this next step and stay undefeated as long as they can here in conference, obviously, as well?
I think both of those apply. I think there's Mundelein's always had good coaching. From Kessel to Wilhelm, who's had some successful years, to Kennard, and even Corey, who was a part of the success in the Kennard years. And now you have a new coach great hire by Coach Troy Parola. And again, to answer your other question, yes, the players are starting to gel, and they're more than just 2 guys now. They have kids that can play on that team that can do more to contribute on a weekly basis.
I agree with your point. I think it's a mixture of both. I always thought all coaches from Kessel through all the way up to Badgley have definitely brought a certain level of excitement, especially with the dynamics of the school. But I think it's definitely 2-star athletes that get a lot of the headline, and Connor Enright, Drake Commit, and then Scotty Boubé, we'll see where he ends up. But I think the question that remains when we're talking especially about players that we asked Joe Aguilar is how will a bench hold up when it comes to those later in conference games? We saw Trey Baker, and we saw other key players and Bicus as well.
They have depth, so and they're I would say their top 8-9 guys are pretty solid. So that's good enough. I mean, it really is, especially when they're anchored by guys like Enright and Abube. But if I were to say who the best player in conference is, I think the guy with the highest ceiling could be this Abube kid. He's got incredible size and measurements, and he's so active. He's got a motor, but I got a chance to coach his younger brother. These guys jump out of the gym. They're power dunkers. They're exciting to watch. This Abube team this Mundelein team is an exciting team to watch.
Well, and this is the thing I wanted to bring up is the first 2 seasons of Coach Badgley went from 4 wins before he got there to 14 wins now to 20 last year, and that's such a big jump. I mean, just let's talk about the first year alone. From 4 to 14, a 10-win increase. That alone is enough to put some eyes on you, and then to increase that again by 6 wins the following year. Do we see a possible, like Stevenson, do we see a possible 25, 26, maybe 27
sure.
game?
Well, the record at Mundelein is 29 wins. And I'll go out and say that they'll have a legitimate chance to contend with that. So, and then the crazy part is then they run it back another year with everybody. They really don't lose anybody. So, listen, if you haven't seen the Mustangs, you probably should go check them out. As well as the Stevenson team. When's the game, Carson? They're playing soon, right?
No,
I know WRLR is covering. I know Rusty's going to be on the mic. What's the date on that? We can give
The
listeners.
Stevenson Mundelein will be January 10th on a Friday
January 10th on a Friday.
at Stevenson.
And here's the last thing we'll say about Mundelein. This Friday, Ben Bruss is coming back. He's being inducted into the Hall of Fame. Had an incredible career at Wisconsin, Final Four. I mean, you could YouTube that guy, but he's going to actually do his show live at the high school from 3 to 5. So a lot going on right now. There's a lot of high school buzz going on in the Mundelein High School, but that's the game to watch. I mean, really that game, and even tomorrow, I believe there's going to be a really, really interesting game coming up, Libertyville versus Stevenson. We're going to find out right off the bat about this Libertyville Stevenson team.
Something I noticed that you said to me, Carson, was I don't know if they're going to breeze through it. And I find that entertaining because you said last year the other team that was sitting among Stevenson was Waukegan, yes?
Correct.
Who is winless this year?
Yes,
Okay.
0-5, right.
So what are we saying then? Are we really saying that they're not going to breeze through like Stevenson? Or do you have a dark horse team among all these other teams competing that may in fact take the shine away from a Stevenson team?
Well, here's what it is. It really comes down to history. The Mustangs haven't won a conference title since 94.
In 93, 94.
The year 2013, they probably should have if it wasn't for that injury. So it's something that it's possible. It could happen. But in terms of Waukegan, I don't know if it applies because Waukegan, it can all change in a heartbeat. It may just take 1 year for all that to change, and they'll be back to being contenders.
Yeah, and Mundelein, the sky's the limit for them. They were at the regional championship last year, lost to Deerfield, beat them this year. But certainly they're on what Coach Garcia and I call it a revenge tour.
I don't call it that. You call it that. I don't
their
like that.
I like how
T-shirts.
quickly Becky's like, hold on now.
Yeah.
But one thing I noticed, though, is that a team like, and this is a game that I was lucky enough to be able to call with Rusty, actually, last Friday, was the girls' varsity team. It's Lakes High School versus Grays Lake Central. And not to get too off subject or anything, but saying about how these teams and what teams, to your point, might have better recruiting tools as a high school and say, hey, if you come here, we have a team that went 27 wins last year. We have a team that you can come join. And that was Rusty's point about the women's varsity for Grays Lake Central is they continuously try to recruit up to a high school level even, and that's why they're able to blow teams out by like 50.
You're talking about Warren? What were we talking about? Which team in specific?
No, so for Rusty and I, we were discussing for the women's
I got you.
basketball. We were discussing Grays Lake Central and how good they are recruiting, but that's what I seem to notice at teams like Stevenson and these good teams that you're reporting on at the end of every year, seemingly, is how advanced is their recruiting system, even out of middle school? How badly do they want top talent around the area?
Well, I can speak for maybe a couple of people, but I would say not much, because you buy a house in Lake County, you're pretty settled in. It's hard to really move around, but it is possible. I mean, stuff like that does happen, but it isn't very rare. It isn't very common. I would say though that a kid may start at an earlier age and go, listen, this program's great. I want my daughter, or I want my son to play this sport for that program, and so you're able to probably pull out a lot more talent from just your community in terms of developing like that next really good high school player. That's a good point, actually.
All right, let's transition gears to their rivals who's sitting at third place in conference, the Libertyville Wildcats. Libertyville is 5-1, coming off impressive victories of their own. Last Tuesday, Libertyville beat Carmel at home, 59-43. And then they won at Glenbrook North in overtime, 55-54. Both solid programs that they competed with. And they'll play at Stevenson on Tuesday, who is undefeated, 5-0, as we mentioned earlier. Then they'll take on Warren, who is 2-4 on Friday, a team that wants to get back on the winning track, but is certainly competitive. Coach Garcia, I'm going to start with you. What have you taken from Libertyville? I know you saw them in person against your Corsairs. We had Will Moore on the show, and you saw Blake Ellingson's skills on the basketball court, the quarterback for the Libertyville football team.
Here's what I can tell you about Libertyville. And I don't know if I've said it to you before or even live, but Libertyville hit a home run when they hired Coach Z. And it's not that Libertyville's seeing new talent. It's now Libertyville is developing. There's an excitement in the program. There's an exciting brand and style in the program, and that's really attracting the talent pool that is in Libertyville. To go to his point about the feeder system, JCATS is one of the best feeder systems maybe in the Chicagoland area. I mean, it's top notch. So a lower level Libertyville game is always going to be very competitive. They're always at the top in the lower levels, and so now you're starting to see that. And that's this year you have a team that really has a lot of guys that can do a lot of different things. Guys that can defend, guys that can dribble, guys that can shoot, and they have a good amount of size to go along with that. And they have some excitement and really good coaching to go along with that too.
I definitely think Libertyville is going to be extremely competitive, and like you said, the coaching hire was definitely a good move. I know last year was like the first time in a while that they had a losing record, but they didn't go down without a fight. They definitely keep it scrappy, and they definitely can ruin a couple teams' hopes of grasping a conference crown, and who knows how far they can make in the 4A playoffs.
Well, the worst thing you can do is overlook these guys. If there was a ranking, they're my third ranked team in Lake County as far as the teams that we cover. This is a very strong Libertyville team that is capable of beating a really good team on any given night. And I mean, they're good themselves, but they played Evanston very, very tough. And I watched that game, and they were winning at the end of the game. And this is a really, really strong Evanston team. So you do the math.
And this is something I wanted to ask you, Carson. What is their record right now?
5-1.
5-1. Okay, so they've only lost one game. That's great. I mean, they're already a third of the way to their wins that they had last season, and losing a great player in Josh Steinhaus. In losing Josh, where do you think they go? I mean, obviously it's a great start. Do they keep this momentum, or do like Coach Garcia is saying, or do they falter? What do we see as a possible, and I'll say this, not to obviously hate on the team or anything, but what do you see as a possible Achilles heel to these main top three teams that we're looking at, especially someone like Libertyville trying to bounce back from an under 500 season last year?
Honestly, this team is so well balanced that if they were to lose a Graham, one of their top players, or if they were to lose, let's say, their point guard or even their shooter Watson, then I would be a little bit worried. But I don't see that happening. Obviously, this is just a really good balanced team that brings a lot to the table. They do a lot of things very very well, and probably the one thing they do really, really well is they can shoot it.
So capitalize this season, because I noticed that the two players that you're talking about, Graham and Watson, are both seniors this year. So they will not be here next season. So will this be the time to cash in on this and ride a wave to a possible?
They got a sophomore who probably by the end of the season may start, who probably could be starting now, 6'6", kind of a wing. He can shoot it really well. And then their lower levels are pretty good too. So they have some lower levels. I had a chance to see their lower levels. They got a lot of size, and they got a lot of kids again that can shoot the ball. So you're going to see a Libertyville team that could be better next year than they are this year.
Like you said, I feel like they brought a lot of people back. A lot of their players from their team last year, even though it was a couple games under 500, they were young and they're gaining experience. So I definitely look at Libertyville as contenders, not only in the conference but in the county. But we're going to transition over to the next team in the North Suburban Conference, the Zion Benton ZBs. Zion is 3-2 and only had one game last week, and that was a dominant victory over Hirsch, 77-25, who is 1-3. Zion will host Lake Zurich, who is 2-3 on Tuesday, and then they'll hit the road at Stevenson, who is 5-0 on Friday. Coach Garcia, what do you make of the ZBs, a team that brings some interesting talent, and this is also another team that you definitely cannot take lightly.
Yeah, the ZBs are extremely athletic. They play when they're at their best. They're playing at it just in a high tempo pace. The question is going to be: Are they going to be able to settle in and play the style and the way that Coach Worthington wants them to play? So, if that happens, this is a team that can jump up in the standings right away. They probably will tell you that their start hasn't been the best, but this is a very dangerous Zion team, as expected, with loads of talent.
And then I think we're going to learn a lot about them. Like Zurich has improved. That's definitely not going to be a game that you can just check mark. I think that'll definitely be a scrappy one. And then how will they fare against the topper echelon of teams like Stevenson come this Friday? And it's also on the road. It's going to be an interesting dynamic.
Well, here's what I'll tell you about Stevenson. Coach Ambrose has kind of cracked the code on pressure. So he's got his guys ready for pressure. Sometimes with a team like Stevenson, you got to be able to play them straight up. You got to be able to play them in a solid man-to-man, throw in some press here and there, but you got to beat them in a half-court game. And again, when we're talking about Zion, that's something that they don't want to play at. So if Zion's able to make a team like Stevenson play a lot faster, it's going to be a Zion game advantage. And if not, there are some teams that do match up well with Zion, and I think like a Libertyville, who wants to play at a faster pace, Mundelein, who may be able to play at both paces with Zion. Well, actually, I should say they can, but other than that, Zion is up there, and I'd have them number 4, so they'd be on my number 4. So they're a team that can beat anybody, but also I don't know yet if we can say that they're the title contenders.
All right, the next team we'll look at is the Lake Forest Scouts. Lake Forest is 3-3, and they split their 2 games last week. Lake Forest won at Grays Lake Central last Wednesday, 45-42, and then they lost at two Prospect, 56-36 on Saturday. Lake Forest will hit the road at Mundelein on Tuesday, who is 6-0, and then they'll play at Lake Zurich, who is 2-3 on Friday. So, Coach Garcia, I know that you and I both know that the coach there is very experienced, especially in the win column. Last year was a little under 500, kind of similar to Libertyville's story, but this team, like like the rest of the North Suburban teams, will not go down without a fight either. What do you take from Lake Forest?
They got a freshman. They got a freshman that's really good, and he's a guy probably worth coming out and watching. This isn't a Lake Forest team that's very big or doesn't really have any stars yet, but they're a team, just from my experience dealing with Lake Forest, playing against them, watching them, they can beat a really good team on any given night, even despite how well they're doing. So I imagine this team will probably float around the 500 range, but again, they're capable of beating anybody on any given night because they're really well coached.
The next team we'll look at in the North Suburban is the Lake Zurich Bears. Lake Zurich is 2-3, and they lost their only game from last week, last Tuesday against St. Viator, 34-29. Lake Zurich will play at Zion Benton on Tuesday, who is 3-2. Then they will host Lake Forest on Friday, who is 3-3. Coach Garcia, this is kind of a bounce back year for Lake Zurich, and they're already starting to catch up to their win total from last year when they were only 7-24 a year ago. But I know this is only the coach's second year. But what do you take from how Lake Zurich's competing, at least up to now, before they hit conference play tomorrow?
Well, Coach Coughlin, he comes from New Trier, as we talked about. So the one thing his guys are going to be able to do is they're going to be able to defend. And remember, they've added a couple nice football athletes on there too, Moses and Pagat. So they're going to be able to defend you, and therefore they'll always be in most games that they play in. So they're able to shoot well. They're able to handle pressure. And this is a team that it's a North Suburban team. It's a well-coached team. These kids can play. And so even though it's not exactly a peak year for Lake Zurich, this is a team that can still cause some damage. But I'm interested in seeing how these football players look and how much they're able to contribute to the team.
Well, one thing I'm noticing, as Carson pointed out, is our last season, 7-24, eliminated by Palatine High School, which is right behind my house. But they with that record, I get it. They can anything would look like a bounce back season. If you have 10 wins, that's a semi bounce back season. You can look at it that way. One thing I would ask you to is over the next couple games that Carson mentioned, they're facing teams that are middling around 500 to start the year. Is their real test going to be really into conference play after these teams? When you get to the one-loss teams, maybe the undefeateds, do you see them breaking through, or do you see them putting up a good fight yet maybe struggling a little?
I think early on we might have been worried, but that St. Viator game, it tells you. I mean, right there, that's all you got to see is they're able to, if they're able to turn the game into how they want you to play, they can beat you, and they've proven it. Right, last year they had a big win against Mundelein. That was probably one of their bigger wins of the year. But this is a team that's better than last year's team. So, and again, well coached. They're going to be very disciplined. If they're able to shoot well against you, they're going to have a chance to beat you.
I think, going off Patrick's question, I think if they can split a couple of these games against the middle of the pack teams, maybe sweep a couple before they start playing the Stevensons, the Mundeleins, the Libertyvilles, I think that will carry some momentum going to their deeper portion of the season for them to try making a little noise in conference play. But we got two more teams to go in North Suburban and then two more outside before we go to break. The next team we'll look at is the Warren Blue Devils. Warren is 2-4. They split their games from last week. They beat Watosha Central from Wisconsin on Tuesday, 46-39. They lost to a good friend team, 64-48 on Saturday. Warren will play at Waukegan, who is 0-5 on Tuesday. Then they will play at Libertyville on Friday, who is 5-1. Coach Garcia, what do you take from this Warren Blue Devils team that's kind of off to an untraditional slow start for the Blue Devil basketball program led by Jasna?
It is a little bit of a slow start, but again, they're missing a lot. They were missing a lot of their football guys, and they finally got them back against the Frem team that they played. So it may take a little bit of a while for them to gel a little bit. But again, as I said last week, we still got to wait and see how things settle in and how these impact players that are playing basketball now, how they affect the game. And I think it'll be a positive effect.
I mean, I'm not surprised by a team that if you go 500 last year, the fact that we call it a slow start, to me, is just, I call it a start. I mean, I call it what it looks like, at least, based on past records. What I would say is probably with Warren, if they can go up against some of these teams that may be middle of the pack, who knows, if they go up against some of these teams and win handily, and that will boost confidence. That's what I see happening to a team like Warren, is that confidence-boosting game can go a long way, especially in high school basketball, can go a long way to send you on a run that nobody sees coming, and you'll be the news for the next few weeks because you're it. You were the it team for about a 3-week span. So kind of expound on that, guys.
Well, I think Warren, their brand right now is they can play man-to-man, but they have a 1-2-2 zone that they put on you, and they're able to, sometimes they're able to pressure you a little bit. So if you struggle handling that type of pressure, if you struggle handling that zone, they're capable of beating you. So this is another rich tradition basketball program that on any given night can do damage.
And going off Patrick's question, the reason why I call it untraditional, despite last year's around 500 record, is usually when I was in high school around 2017, 2016, 2018, they were usually in that top 3 trying to compete or try splitting that North Suburban title. So that's why last year was kind of a dip year, and this year is kind of a bounce back year for the Warren program.
All right. Well, not to be like calling you out for being a little newbie there, but Warren's been pretty good for a really, really long time.
Oh, that's what I'm saying.
A little bit longer than since you've been around.
I'm just going off what I know.
I'm just joking around. But and listen, downstate appearances, second place appearances downstate. This is one of the top dogs when you're talking about Lake County basketball programs.
The next team we'll look at, the last team in the North Suburban Conference, is the only winless team in conference and county, the Waukegan Bulldogs. They lost at Notre Dame, a game I was in attendance, 87-25 last Tuesday. Then they lost at Carmel on Saturday, 55-25. Waukegan will host Warren, who is 2-4 on Tuesday. Then they'll play at Mundelein on Friday, who is 6-0. And then versus St. Patrick's, who is 4-1 at Ridgewood on Sunday. Coach Garcia, I know that Waukegan's a little young this year, but what do you think's their key to finding some momentum and groove to try hanging around in the middle of the pack?
That's a tough question. What I can tell you about this Waukegan team is, even though despite their the losses from last year, and despite how young they are, Coach Ashlaw, he's coaching them like they're undefeated, and it's such a great thing to see when you see a coach who is so invested in the program and has been so successful over his career there at Waukegan. And it's nice to see that there's still a lot of fight in this Waukegan team. And I think for sure what you see now isn't going to be what you see at the end of the year. It's going to be a lot better Waukegan team that you're going to see.
I definitely agree, and I think you and I can both agree that in the game, at least from Saturday, the second game I saw them, they are competitive, and they
were beating us in the first quarter. I mean, they came out and they played really well. So we kind of had to settle in a little bit, and we're able to win it. But again, they're improving, they're getting better, and Coach Ashlaw is, sometimes your least successful season can be your best coaching season. It does happen, and Coach Ashlaw, he's got no quit in him.
All right, the next team we'll look at is Coach Garcia's Carmel Corsairs from the East Suburban Catholic League. Carmel is 3-4. They went 1-2 in their games last week. They lost at Libertyville on Tuesday, as we mentioned. Then they lost versus Nazareth in a close one, 45-42 on Friday. But then they bounced back on the winning track and beat Waukegan 55-25 on Saturday. Carmel will play at Bradley Tech from Wisconsin on Tuesday. Then they'll play at St. Patrick on Friday. Coach, I have to start with you because this is a team that you see every day.
Yeah,
what are you looking
be
for?
seeing them a little bit. Well, we're playing a little bit of a wild card team tomorrow, Bradley. So we're a little bit excited about it. We played them last year at home, kind of able to jump on them a little bit early and rode that. But this year we're going down and we're playing there and we're a little bit excited about that just because it's a completely new environment for us. Just to have to go down there in Wisconsin, you play 2 halves, 18-minute quarter or 18-minute halves, which is exciting.
Style.
Yeah, exciting. So we're pumped about it, and we're hoping Chemo comes back. He's a little sick right now, so either way we'll be ready. But and then we cap the week off with St. Pat's, which I hope this is appropriate, but it feels like when you're playing in conference, especially St. Pat's, and you got to go play down at St. Pat's, it's kind of like a little bit of a bar fight. Like you and your buddies are going down, and you're getting ready to throw it down. And I say that in the most Catholic way, but it's fun. I mean, it's like you're getting ready for war. And it's something I can't explain. But it's very exciting, and that's just kind of how conference is. It's a rough and tough type of environment, which again we're excited about being in.
I think Coach Fitzgibbons would be able to explain that little Catholic fight.
Yeah, you're right, and his fight on the football field is probably like a little bit closer to a bar fight. So, but yeah, you'd get some really candid and refreshing responses from Coach Fitz about that.
Well, 1, sounds like Irish Catholic. 2, last year you had 22-13. And
Correct.
And that to me is putting you guys up in the top 5 in my book. If you're having that kind of run this year,
yeah.
It would be the ability to really be chasing a title there. And I do see about the loss in there, but I don't mind about that. The one question I was going to ask you, Coach, is I do see a few players that were not returning that left and they either left or went to college, university,
Johnny
whatever else.
Roser.
Well, but my point is, 3 of them went to other universities for different sports. Now, is there a key to keeping, when you find a great talent on the basketball court, is there a key in either the coaching method or what have you in order to keep them playing that sport maybe moving forward?
So we do have multiple sport athletes on our team. I would say the one thing that might have affected us just a little bit was sometimes when a guy plays football and he's your best player or your second best player or your third best player, they can come out a little bit rusty maybe. So and I know you said that we're probably early on we were ranked, we're top 5 team coming in, but it's early and we're or at least my job is we're just trying to get better every single day. But we don't mind it, and we actually encourage it. We want our kids to play multiple sports, even if it's our best guys. We feel like they learn a lot from it. So, but it does have an effect. I mean, you look. There's other teams like Warren who maybe feeling it a little bit. But I guess it's something that after a while you get used to, and you there's no excuses. So you move on, and you every day you're like I said, you're trying to get better.
The last team we'll look at is the Vernon Hills Cougars from the Central Suburban League. Vernon Hills is 4-2. We had Coach McCarthy on the show last week. They split their 2 games from last week. Vernon Hills beat Grant last Wednesday 64-43, and then they lost at Highland Park on Friday 60-42. Vernon Hills will play at Lakes, who is 1-4 on Tuesday. Then they'll play Grays Lake Central, who is 1-5 on Wednesday. Then they will host their in-conference rivals, Maine East, who is 0-5 on Friday. Coach Garcia, what do you take from this Vernon Hills team that's already starting to get closer to their win total from last year, but we know overall as a program that they usually try keeping it competitive.
Yeah, they're going to do a really good job of keeping it competitive, probably a little bit more than just a good job. But I think we still got to find out how that loss to their one of their starters. I'm drawing a blank on his name, but just the injury to him and how they're going to be able to play moving forward. So we'll probably get an idea about that in the next couple of weeks. But Vernon Hills plays a real nice, tough schedule. They're well coached. We had Coach McCarthy on last week, and they're going to be a lot more competitive this year for sure.
Well, and that's what I like to hear you say is something like they're going to be more competitive this year, learning from maybe possible mistakes of last year that led to the 9-22 record. Very possibly, all these teams, it seems like early on we keep talking about, well, what are their chances? How close are they to coming through? Are they a dark horse team? What are we looking at? And for me, there's only a few true dark horse teams, and I think very likely, like Coach Garcia was saying, Vernon Hills, if they continue to keep pushing, could be one of them.
I definitely agree, and part of the thing that we brought up with Coach McCarthy is maybe I feel that there's maybe a few adjustments to the conference. They've only been in the conference, I believe this is their 4th year, so it's kind of feeling that out, as well as they had to switch Niles North into their division. So I definitely expect Vernon Hills to be a dark horse and competitive, and they also brought Brown from 2 years ago. So
playing a tough schedule, it iron sharpens iron. So they'll definitely, no disrespect to the northern Lake County, but the central suburban is a lot better, and so that in turn is going to make this Vernon Hills team a lot better. That they have to play those guys.
And the funny thing is, you said that Vernon Hills plays Lakes and also Grays Lake Central, which is a game that I was lucky enough to host with Rusty on Friday, the female varsity or the women's varsity game on Friday. It was a lot of fun, and I'm hoping real quickly after the break, I'd like to give you a piece of Coach Phelan's mind as varsity women's coach for Lakes, and of course Coach Eichen from Grays Lake Central. But I think Vernon Hills overall could definitely be get on a run and prove to everyone that the 9-22 was just a fluke.
All right, I'm looking forward to that as well, and we're going to hop the break, and don't touch that dial. You've been listening to Lake County Sports Scoop on 98.3 WRLR, the voice of Lake County.
You're listening to 98.3 FM, WRLR LP, Round Lake, Illinois.
Cornicchione's New York-style pizzeria in Antioch at Routes 83 and 173 is another proud sponsor of WRLR Sports. Cornicchione's pizza dough is made from scratch using a family recipe that originated in Brooklyn, New York. Their dough is proofed at least 24 hours. Cornicchione's menu includes pizzas, calzones, pasta, much more. They have dine-in, carry-out, and delivery. Their number is 224-308-1499.
When I'm under, I'm weightless, floating away, and all I think about is doing it again.
Michael Swan is under the influence of his volunteer swim coach. Spending a little time coaching, he helps Michael stay off drugs. Be a coach, a mentor, a volunteer. No matter what it is, you have something to offer. Log on to helpyourcommunity.org or call 877-KIDS-313 and be an influence on the kids in your community. Brought to you by the Office of National Drug Control Policy and the Ad Council.
Today's sports broadcast is made possible by O'Keefe, Lewis, and Bruno PC, proud to sponsor another season of Lake County High School sports broadcasts on WRLR 98.3 FM, helping home buyers, sellers, and others with real estate transactions. O'Keefe, Lewis, and Bruno PC can be reached at 847-675-4790.
I can't believe he found them.
He seems sorry.
We very clearly told him not to look up there.
I'm honestly impressed that he was able to do it.
Right? But did he balance on that big chair?
Yeah, I mean, I guess he'll just know what his gifts are this year.
I really thought we had hidden them well.
If they can find their presents, they can find a gun.
911, what is your emergency?
Every day, 8 kids and teens are unintentionally killed or injured by loaded and unlocked guns. Learn how to make your home safer at endfamilyfire.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and End Family Fire.
Hi, I'm Carson Beck. Do you like your weekly dose of Lake County sports? I have a show for you. Tune in to Lake County Sports Scoop right here on 98.3 WRLR on Mondays from 4 to 5 p.m. where me and my co-host, Carmel Corsairs assistant boys basketball coach, Fidel Garcia, recap and preview all things Lake County sports.
WRLR 98.3 FM.
And we're back to Lake County Sports Scoop. You're listening to 98.3 WRLR, the voice of Lake County. As usual, we are joined by Carmel Corsairs varsity assistant boys basketball coach Fidel Garcia. And then we got a special guest, the Golden Sports Show, Patrick Voss, in today joining us. And he's going to play us a clip of his interview that he got first from the Lakes girls head coach and then the Grays Lake Central girls coach. Take it away.
I appreciate it. Hey, by the way, you got it right.
Yeah.
The Golden Sports Show every Wednesday from 2 to 4 p.m. here on 98.3 FM. We're going to go right into Phelan, Coach Phelan for women's varsity for Lakes, and then, of course, Coach Eichen on their win for Grays Lake Central. So, Coach Phelan, my one question for you is, even with this loss coming and the one win on the season so far, what are the improvements possibly coming to this team in the future, and like a person like Rosemary Takempe?
Yeah, today the nervous part about getting ready for the game is, can we break their press? And we went over it one day in practice, and I thought we handled the press really well, and that was a huge win. And so we're just going to build on that. We had the lead, so we'll just build on, we came out against Carmel and Grays Lake Central, we came out believing we could win, and we started off strong and then just faded away. So just building on that early game mindset and just keep that going. Rosie, she's attacking well and working on learning how to be a leader as a point guard, both on and off the court. So sky's the limit for the Eagles here.
I appreciate it, Coach Phelan. Have a good night.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So my question, Coach Eichen, is, with people like Kate Bowman and Koshikowski really dominating, where do you go from here? How do you improve the team?
Well, it's a team. It's not two players. We've got 10 healthy players, so how we improve is we keep working to get everybody contributing better and us playing more consistent on both ends of the floor. And it's really hard to defend if you've got 5 people out there that are a scoring threat, and I think we will get to the point where we could do that.
And that was going to be my next question, is that scoring threat. I see plenty of players stepping up, plenty of players, and also Drevlin as well, really stepping up tonight.
No, I agree, and that's what we've been looking for, and I really like it. Piper Gallagher's had a couple of nice games recently. I thought Carissa Guerrier came off the bench, did a nice job. Everybody kind of forgets about Madeline Mousset, our point guard, because she does so many other things, but she can score some too. But yeah, I do think we've got some threats. We just got to keep playing together and keep working to get good shots.
Well, great game, Coach Eichen. Have a good night.
Thank you. You too.
Great interview by our own Patrick Voss, who's sitting in today, and definitely a very interesting game. A swing of momentums indeed. But let's transition gears to Northern Lake County basketball boys. The Wakanda Bulldogs from the Northern Lake County Conference is 4-2, coming off 2 impressive victories from last week. Wakanda beat Woodstock 73-44 on Wednesday, and then they beat Grant, one of their in-conference teams, 68-52. Wakanda will play at Elgin, who is 3-3 on Wednesday, and they'll play at Grays Lake North on Saturday. Coach Garcia, what do you take from this Wakanda team? A team that we thought was going to play spoiler, but right now they're sitting first in conference.
They're my dark horse to win that conference. I imagine it's been a while since that basketball team's won conference, but they're always competitive. And this year, senior year for star player Donovan Carter, this could be a year where they steal it. I think they play a fast-paced brand of basketball. They play a 1-2-2 matchup, and it's working for them, and good for them. I hope, as I've told you before, I'm a Wakanda ex-resident, so I don't mind if those Bulldogs do pretty well.
The next team we'll look at from the Northern Lake County Conference is the Round Lake Panthers. Round Lake is 3-2, and they split their 2 games from last week. Round Lake lost at Elmwood Park 61-59, who was 5-1. And then they won at Antioch 65-47. Round Lake will host Grant on Tuesday, and then they'll play at Woodstock, who is 2-3 on Thursday.
Well, I talked to the assistant from Round Lake, and they were able to get the pressure on, and they were able to kind of turn it up. That's what they're going to look to do. They're going to look to pressure you. They're going to look to play a transitional game, and they were successful in that when they played against Antioch. They were able to create a little bit points off of those turnovers, and if you're able to crack the pressure, you're going to have a chance to beat them. If you're not, the Panthers are going to gang up on you.
And this is something I noticed, and this is something I like a lot about Round Lake, is that you're consistently saying they're scoring over 60 points, and that's something you need, especially in high school ball, to be that near top-tier team. You need that. You need 60 to 70 points a game to cement yourselves, especially when playoffs come around, to cement yourself as one of the top-tier teams. And that was just a quick, brief thing. That's why Grays Lake women's varsity beat Lakes High School on last Friday. They beat them, I believe it was 70-24. Terrible loss for Lakes. But Grays Lake, again, 70 points, and they continue to do so. And like Round Lake, they will continuously find themselves at the top tier.
Definitely a bounce-back year for Round Lake, but they're definitely exceeding expectations, even though Coach RC and I probably had a little higher than
Well, just
the average
remember,
Joe.
the question is the points are nice, but if a team, no, they do play defense, but if a team is able to slow the pace down, you know what I mean? The question becomes, can you play with that? And if you're going to be good, you got to be able to do both. You got to be able to play in a fast pace as well as being able to slow it down and execute.
The next team we'll look at in the Northern Lake County Conference is the North Chicago Warhawks. North Chicago is 1-6, and they split their games from last week. They lost at Mundelein 66-32 last Wednesday. Then they beat Lake 63-61 in overtime. North Chicago's only game will be at home versus Antioch. Coach Garcia, what do you take from North Chicago, a team that usually hoists up the conference crown?
Well,
prior to last year, of course.
I'm going to change my mind, and I'm going to say do not count these guys out. I watched their last game against Lakes. They stole it from Lakes at the end of the game. One of the players on North Chicago's team hit a shot almost at the buzzer. Lakes ends up throwing like a half-court shot. But the one thing I noticed is there's a lot of new parts to this team, but they're huge. They got a 6'8", 270-pound kid. You got another 6'7" kid. If I'm not mistaken, they probably got another kid that 6'4", and then they got some other big guards. So I think this North Chicago team is going to be dangerous. Right now, they're not as good as they've typically been, but they're dangerous, and they are they're well coached.
All right, the next team we'll look at in the Northern Lake County Conference is the Antioch Seacoits. Antioch is 3-1, and they also split their games from last week. They beat Watosha Central from Wisconsin in overtime on Thursday. Then they lost against Round Lake on Saturday, 65-47. Antioch's only game this Saturday is at North Chicago. What do you take from the Seacoits, Coach Garcia?
I don't know much about the Seacoits. All I really know is I think that win they had against the school from Wisconsin was pretty solid. But here's what I know is if they can handle your pressure and it's a slow-paced game, half-court game, they're going to have a chance. So you're going to have to speed them up. You're going to have to turn them over. So far, not too many teams have been able to do that. So we'll see moving forward. This is a team that really no one really knows much about.
And Antioch, what record are we looking?
Right now, they are 3-1.
3-1. See, this is a thing that I don't understand. This is what perplexes me about high school sports, is that a team can go from being 13-14 in 1 year to 3-1 starting off the very next season and looking like a contender. That absolutely confuses me, because I can see why things happen in recruiting through collegiate sports and through professional sports year to year. But for high school sports, when you have kids that have to go there, or some transfer, but you have kids that mostly go to a school for 4 years, how is it that they have such a diverse array of win totals from year to year?
Well, I think in Antioch's case, you could be mistaking them for the football team, but the football team is very successful, and I think that in itself affects a lot of the other boys' programs. And the Antioch team, who just the coach from last year, Coach White, who's done a fantastic job there. I just think right now nobody knows what this Antioch team is capable of this year, but I don't know if we're exactly putting them in the upper echelon of that conference. I think they're just coming out with a nice start, and there's still a lot to be said about them. That's about it.
Due to time, we'll focus on one more team, Grays Lake North. Grays Lake North is 3-3, and they are coming off a week in which they also split their games last week. Grays Lake North beat Badger from Wisconsin 63-41 last Wednesday. Then they lost versus Grays Lake Central on Saturday, 51-49. Grays Lake Central's only game this week will be against Wakanda. So, Coach Garcia, what do you take from Grays Lake North, a team that people thought were going to be probably the favorites for this conference, but we know that an injury occurred on their team. So, what do you take from them?
They're still good, and they proved it against Grays Lake Central when they went to Grays Lake Central and played them close. So this is a team that's still in the thick of that conference race, and they got a great freshman that isn't going to be Connolly, but he's going to be able to help carry them on certain nights. He's good. He does a lot for them.
All right, that'll do it for Lake County Sports Scoop. Thanks for tuning in. As always, you can catch us next week, Monday at 4. And don't forget to tune in this Saturday as Grays Lake Central Rams take on the Lakes Eagles Boys Hoops right here on WRLR. That'll do it. Live from Round Lake Beach Metro Station. So long, and enjoy the rest of your week.
Easy come and easy go.